Welcome to another episode of Around the Table with Powerful Women. I'm Joy Caffrey.
I'm Christi Daniels.
And here with us today as our guest is Savanah Puckett, a native Arkansas resident woman, a native Arkansas. And she has 5 children, and we're here today to talk to her about mothering and what that means for her life and how it's unfolded. And we would love to show the powerful aspect of being a mom. And we have Sarah with us to share that. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, first tell me your kids. Tell me how old they are. And
my oldest one's 11. He'll be 12 this summer. He's in middle school. And then the younger 4 are all under 5. My daughter will be 6 soon. Then there's a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an almost 1-year-old.
Right. So you've got 2 in diapers.
2 in diapers.
Yeah.
Finally. It was 3 in diapers for a little while.
Yeah, moving up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of diapers are in sight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And has it been your intention to be a stay-at-home mom since your first pregnancy, or tell me how that's evolved?
After I had my first child, I was in school, and his father and I broke up when he was a toddler, when he was 2. And so there was a time there, a couple of years, that I was a single mom with just the 2 of us. And I worked full time. I was working 60 plus hours a week at a restaurant in Fayetteville. And then I met my husband, and then we decided to have children, and we had a bunch of them right in a row.
Right.
You
had the opportunity to stay home with them.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was something that we decided was important, especially for the little ones. I worked in daycares at one point, years ago, and I remember seeing the smaller babies that were in daycare, and that always made me sad. I mean, if that's what you have to do, there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I'm very much an attachment parent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and tell me what that means for you, or explain for women that might not even know, that aren't pregnant yet. They might not know what attachment parenting is.
My children are attached to me all the time, for better or for worse. We co-sleep. They sleep in the bed with us until our 2-year-old is still sleeping with us right now. I breastfeed, I baby wear, I always have a baby on my hip.
I want to vouch for some of the pictures I've seen on Facebook. Actually, one of the reasons I thought of bringing you on was a beautiful photo of all of you in the bed, right? And there was like a big puppy pile, and it was so beautiful. And I was like, who's in the middle of mothering right now? Savannah.
Savannah's in the middle of it. I am in the trenches, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
So what about your own experience growing up? Like, were you one of many? Or?
I wasn't. I have an older sister who is 9 years older than me, and we have different fathers, and so she lived with her dad sometimes, so a lot of it felt like growing up as an only child. And then my mom was single, so it was a much smaller, quieter household. My husband is also an only child of 2 military parents, and so both of us grew up without the sibling dynamic at all, really. So that's been interesting trying to navigate, because we, like conflict resolution and things like that, especially for my husband, having grown up with military parents, it's just, he doesn't really understand conflict resolution and like hearing one person out and those kinds of things.
Sure, because it's more of like an authoritarian
household,
I would imagine.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges I've seen with families is different parenting styles. Right. And is that something you guys bump into, or you figure out how to smooth it out, or do you allow it to be, like, do you feel like you guys have to be on the same page, or you're okay with having different styles?
It's a little bit of everything, you said. I mean, there are definitely times that, like you said, it's the authoritarian that he comes from versus I'm more of, like, having been a parent and a stay-at-home parent for this long, it has been my career. And so I read parenting books, and I read, I'm in parenting groups, and I talk to my mom friends, and fathers don't really have that. I mean, they can if they take the time, but they don't have dad groups that they bounce conversations off of, and so I would say that's a way in which we but head sometimes is he will think, well, this is the only way to do it, and I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Right.
Now this is the way we do it.
Yeah. And or I've heard of these other 4 ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I don't want to be the person that's always right, but on the other
Yeah.
hand, I'm like, I have hundreds, if not thousands of hours of experience learning about this, and you have just had these 4 years of parenting, which is, or 5, almost 6, but so that's been a...
And I'm hearing in this, maybe for the first time, I'm realizing that, this is a profession.
Yes.
This is, you're dedicating your life.
It has to be, to an extent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what does that mean to you? It takes a lot. I'm a parent of 3, grandparent of 2. I was a single parent for many, many, many years. And so it takes a lot to be a mom.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering how that is for you. Like, what motivates you?
On one hand, there is a yearning for more. There is, I think I'm a smart person. I should be using my brain for something else. Or there's so much to see, and here I am sitting down changing diapers, and I don't have time to read a book for myself or to do those things. But on the other hand, I will say the way I've made my peace with it on one level is I really like a challenge, and I like figuring things out, and unfortunately, I tend to be efficient to a fault, and I get things done, and I'm always moving, and so that kind of works for me as a mother of many, because I just
That's a really good innate skill to have as a mom.
It is.
Not all of us have that as a mom.
And so it works for me, but on the other hand, as I go through my own personal growth and my own healing, I'm like, okay, what of that is good, and a quality that I need to nurture, and what if that is a defense mechanism because I'm afraid to slow down and think about what it means to me, or
or might feel where the unmet longings are.
Right. And I have this inadequacy complex that if I'm not doing, then what am I worth, And so that's a big one, I think, for a lot of women in general, but
we attach our worthiness to our
productivity.
Rather
Absolutely.
than just the inherent worthiness that we have as a human.
Which we'd love to spread through this podcast and the show, is that we are inherently worthy of being, and that it's okay for us to be still, and it's okay for us to do.
The human being,
as opposed
part
to
of
doing.
the human being,
is very valued.
And I can imagine that being a mom of 5, there must be, I'm guessing, is there more doing than being?
Of course, absolutely.
So how do you find time to be, for your being, for the nurturing and nourishing for yourself?
A lot of times I don't. I have to be intentional about it. One thing, just particularly this winter, I have found my favorite chair in our house, and it was never really a chair I sat in before, but I sat down in it one day and I was like, oh, I like this spot, And so I can see out over the fields and the hills behind our house, and nobody can really, they can find me, but they're not going to walk past and see me. And so I've been making intentional time to brew myself a cup of tea and leave my phone and leave my book and leave anything and just sit and allow that silence or lack of silence sometimes, but so I've had to be intentional about taking that time.
I think for me, my addiction for showers grew out of that need to carve some time where I could have to myself. My showers got longer and longer.
I can see that. I'm still in the stage where my showers are like 8 minutes after the kids go to bed. I'm washing my hair, hoping I don't hear a baby scream, but.
And so I heard that you had been going to school, and then I saw on Facebook that now you are going back to school.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. What gave rise to that choice, and how did it feel to make that recommitment?
I think it was just when my daughter was born last January, and she's almost a year old, and I recognized that it was our last child. I think that was part of it, is we made that decision. This is the last baby, and so I started thinking about what comes next. And I think I jumped the gun a little bit because she is still a baby. And I mean, I'm still very much in the trenches of young child motherhood. But I started thinking about what else I would like to do, because there was going to come a time that they weren't going to need me so much. And I can't say that I am 100% certain of the decision to do that, but right now we're going with it. So I started school last semester. I'm taking courses towards pre-med. I'm taking a lot of science and math courses. I'm just taking a couple of semesters, but.
And you're going to the campus, or are you doing them online?
I am doing online through NWAC, actually, through the community college. And then when I run out their options, I'll move over to the university. Okay. Yeah. And by that time, I think my youngest will be in kindergarten, and so I'll just knock out the last little bit in person.
And any unexpected either surprises or challenging by in the early parenting years, or with more and more kids, or as parenting is going, like anything like, oh, I wasn't expecting this part of mothering, after you had your first one or two,
I think the one thing that I have really learned about over the past couple of years, I would not say I even figured it out with the first child or the second, we're getting there, is how much of your own healing comes into play with being a mother. I mean, each one of your children pulls something out of you that makes you look deeply and say, oh, that's that's something that I need to work on. But and not in a way of I'm not good enough, but just in a way of, it's a gift, really. It's being given that opportunity to relive those choices.
For me, we have 3 children, and I would call that aspect of parenting conscious parenting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I called it that way because I wanted to, like, if just even a particular age of one of my children would trigger some healing that needed in me, I wanted to make sure it happened in me and mine, not projecting it onto that child.
Absolutely. Because I find myself projecting sometimes. We all have our weak moments, and there are definitely, with 4 little children in the house, there are definitely times that I lose my cool or something, and then I'm like, hey, this is not about them. This is go sit in your chair with your tea until you can calm down.
I've learned I had to give myself time out.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking. So, you had mentioned something before we started talking on camera, and it was about searching for an identity outside of the identity of motherhood. Like, who are you? What could you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe what gave rise to that?
Yeah, I was taking this mini course based on the story of the goddess Inanna, and I may totally butcher this, so if either of you know the story, but the idea is this goddess was traveling into the underworld, and at each of 7 locations she had to sit something down before she could go further, and then after making her journey she rose back up and picked up only what was necessary and only what she needed. So as I went through this course, the very first thing was she had to lay down her crown, and so the question was, if you were to lay down, like, how do you show up in the world? Who are you? What does the world know about you? If you have to lay that down, who are you without that? And I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know. Who am I? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a mother. That's what a lot of people, that's why you called me to be on your show. And that's, with 5 kids, that's what a lot of people think. And so I started thinking about it, and, on one level, the first thing I thought when I was like, who would I be if I didn't have kids? The very first thing I thought was, oh, I'd be free. And while that sounds terrible on one hand, it's also, I think a lot of women in their 30s, give or take a few years, depending on what's happening in their life, I really feel like it's universal that you go through this journey of becoming who you are and figuring out who that is. And and I think a lot of women do it whether you're a mother or not. It's just kind of just a piece of that journey. And so I'm in the middle of that, and I want to read, and I want to write, and I want to travel, and I want to love, and I want to do all these things. And so without kids, I would have time for that. But then I started thinking about it, more metaphorically as the crown initially mentioned. I feel like that crown of motherhood is so fused into my skull that there's no way to put it down. I mean, even if tragically something happened, and I was no longer a mother, I would bleed to death and I would die, I mean, that might be taking the metaphor a little far, but like I can't get rid of that. So I don't know who I would be without motherhood, especially at this point in my life. And then I also took it a little further, and I was thinking about, I found out I was pregnant with my first child when I was 23. And that's, I wasn't a teen mom, and I graduated a couple years early and moved out when I was 16. So I had a couple of extra years of adulthood, but still, 23 is young. And so I had my baby when I was 24. And so when I think about it like that, I'm like, really, who am I if I'm not a mother, And so that's been something I've been contemplating for the past couple of weeks. It came up,
I want to even now go backwards a little bit before
absolutely.
we go forward a little bit. And so part of mothering is being pregnant, right? And tell me how you took to pregnancies, how your pregnancies might have varied from each other, or was there a different aspect of you that came out through pregnancy that you didn't expect, or that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy?
Well, with my first, I've always been very stubborn and resilient, and I've got this kind of thing. And so with my first, it was, I know what to do, or my body knows what to do, which evolved and still.
That's amazing for saying that. You could say that for your first.
Right. I mean, it evolved. And when by the time I had my fifth pregnancy, it was a totally different statement, still saying the same thing. But then it was just a very stubborn, like, I'll figure it out. I don't know, And I had a really healthy pregnancy, and everything was great. And then, it evolved, I guess, all the way until my most recent one. I mean, I was seeing you during that time, and I felt more of I'm really into archetypes right now. And so looking back on it, I was very much like feeling the mother archetype, and the bringing in the great mother and the divine feminine and that kind of thing. And that was obviously not something I was thinking about when I was 23, but, so it's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. Do you have any advice that you would want to give to a young mother that's, someone who finds themselves pregnant at 21, 22, 23, 24?
I wouldn't say anything about pregnancy necessarily, but just about coming into your own is just asking for help, building community. I think that's something, I think never in history have mothers been expected to do as much as they are these days without any support
and without the tribe. There was
the tribe, the neighborhood,
right.
The family, the community.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of mothers, myself included, just don't really have. And you don't realize it until you are able to look at it from a different perspective. But I would say a 21-year-old that suddenly finds herself going through postpartum depression. I mean, there are hormonal things, but a lot of it I feel like is just reckoning with your new identity and not having anyone to talk to about it, and not knowing how to be.
Yeah, and not having people to kind of honor and acknowledge this rites of passage. I mean, that's a very big adjustment.
We're missing some of those rituals in our current culture.
Communities to witness it, and also to help share in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was pregnant, there's so much information that was given to me about pregnancy and labor and delivery, and not enough given about now you're a mother, and what does that mean, and what, the first few months, the first year, and like you said, there can be a sense of isolation in our current culture. And I think it's one of the things that I see in my office is women almost being afraid and embarrassed to say, I don't know if I'm liking this mothering thing.
Absolutely.
And, or like, I don't know, I can't get my kid to brush their teeth and I want to quit. Right. And so there's a lot of struggles that happen that we don't get to have enough witnessing and sharing and laughing about and talking about.
And we don't have that proximity that makes it easy.
Yeah, we're not washing our clothes at the river and
Yeah.
talking about it
Yeah.
while the kids are playing together,
Right.
and we're able to
Baking, preparing meals.
witness each other through birth and death and everything else in
Yeah.
between.
I did hear that you were doing some things, like you're reading books, but you're also maybe taking classes, at least this particular class you were mentioning about the archetypes.
Oh yeah.
So you are doing things to help yourself find connection.
I am. I can't
Yeah.
not. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's calling to me so much that it's hard to just sit back and not do any of those things. I look back at after my third child was born, particularly, I had a really hard time adjusting to just the third child, and I have a lot of friends that have gone through the same thing. And you know, life went on, things got better, but then when I look back at it, the big part of it, I mean, at that time, my husband was in grad school and working full time and going, you know, taking night classes, he was teaching, he was doing faculty, staff, and student all at the same time, you know, and then here we are with this third baby and a new house, and I was homeschooling my oldest at the time, and so I think, I don't know.
It's a lot to take on.
It's a lot to take on. That's
and
at the time I didn't recognize that I needed more than I had needs. Basically, I mean that's really
I
important.
think that's one of those lies that we buy into, that we can do it all ourselves, and that we should do it, and we need to be fiercely independent
and like it as
and
we're
like
doing
it,
it. Like it's not okay.
And it's
to
really
get
it's a
frustrated,
product of the
despair.
culture. It's not. I mean,
Exactly.
we are told that that's the way moms do it. The moms are superhuman, and many of us have proved ourselves to be, because that's what we have to do. But I think it's something that we need to take a long, hard look at as a society.
Yeah. So if we could break a myth, would we want to break that myth that we have to do it all, or we have to do it all and like it, or what would be your variation?
Yeah, both.
Any
Well, I have a question actually. My question was going to be, like, if somebody gave you a magic wand and it was like you could change anything about this culture, you know, that you think would be more beneficial to you, to your family, to your growing kids, to other people, because you're witnessing and you're in the middle of growing 5 future human beings, you know, what would that wish be? You know, what would...
I don't know. I wish I had a fantastic answer to that. This would be a great moment to drop a bomb of truth, you know. But I mean, the community in some sense, and I was thinking while you were talking, I'm not sure what that would be, because you know, on one hand I'm like, let's all go live in a commune together and we can help each other, but that's not logistically possible for everybody, and that's not necessarily what I mean. I just think it's important for just to see each other, that's a really big one. Just
Do you live close to your family, like to your parents or siblings?
yeah, my mom and sister are both within 15 miles from me or so.
And how about your husband's family?
No, my husband's father lives in eastern Arkansas. His mother passed away a few months ago.
Yeah. My
So
husband,
we don't have a tribe, if that's what you're...
Yeah, and my husband and I always felt isolated because we never lived where our families were, right? And it wasn't so easy for us to visit them or for them to visit us. And so we had that sense of isolation, or we would look with envy at, like their parents are always visiting them, or whatever, or watching their kids. Like we felt like other families had built-in babysitters.
Right.
Maybe. And we could play that Maria Folio game of how cool would it be?
Oh,
We were talking about this last night, like if we could say, how cool would it be if anytime you wanted a babysitter, they knocked on your door?
That'd be wonderful.
Or how cool would it be for someone else to come in and make your dinners for you? Or
Yeah, on that babysitter level, I mean, I've been struggling lately, like, you know, there's all these things that need done. The house needs cleaning and the dinner needs cooking, etc. But appointments, man, kids have appointments.
Yeah.
I've had on my to-do list forever, like make dentist appointment, make eye doctor appointment, make, you know, and that in itself is just like it is such a logistical nightmare that sometimes I mean, that it sits on my to-do list forever and I
Right.
don't actually do it because I'm like, how do I get 4 kids to the dentist?
Right.
5, baby on my hip, and then
Yeah.
4 with,
Yeah.
you know.
So you're not just, talking the logistics of the calendar and where and when. It's like how
Get them.
Right.
to get there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all fit in my car.
Sure.
That's not what I mean, but just like
I remember I was one of 5 kids. I was
Mhm.
number 4 or 5, and I do remember going to the dentist with kids, with at least 3 of us at a time,
right.
and and we go, oh, this one in first, and the next one, Anyway, I just have those memories of being dragged in tow at 1 and 5.
Right. And if
Yeah.
all of my 5 kids were like super well behaved, that might be another thing. But then when I have a couple of my kids really struggle with life. And so then
Right.
I add that to it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like as a parent, my experience both as a parent and as a grandparent, these are 3 completely different kids,
Kids.
5 with different needs, different desires, different personalities,
Different metering of how they need what
and,
when.
Yeah, and
Right.
so it's so challenging. For me, it was just super hard because of maybe being able to switch right between them, and then going on a hike, and it's like, okay, this is great. Well, but this one wants to run ahead, and this
Exactly.
one wants to hang
Right.
behind,
Oh, that
and this
was
one wants
so
to stay the
true.
caterpillar, and this
Right.
one, and then it's like, oh, attachment. Okay, let me carry you, and let me.
That was
do
so
all
true.
those
I mean, you
things.
described a hike really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Exactly that. One ahead, one behind, one.
And I actually remember
Mhm.
a hike, and my youngest was 3, and I had a friend who was like on the hike with us, and at that point, like I was still kind of like, I'm carrying him a lot, having given him piggyback rides, and she was just like, listen, you gotta put him down, like he needs to run more, he needs to do his thing, and I would never have seen that.
Right.
I'm just like doing what I know to do to get us through.
Right. Yeah, and so that reflections from
So-
friends and that support from friends.
Yeah, that's
so
a
that-
metaphor for all of it, basically.
Yeah, being able to have somebody see the things that we can't see because we're so far into
We're so in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Your next phase of parenting. I do think parenting has different phases to it,
Mhm.
right? And the pregnancy and the newborns, and then the toddlers and the why years, like the 4-year-olds asking, but why, Mom? Why this?
Right.
Why that? And you have an 11-year-old, right? So as you get into that 11, 12, 13, 14, I call it the taxi driving years, where
Right.
they're not ready to drive. They each have commitments or even homework assignments, like to go to their house for homework, and then all of a sudden
Right.
you're just nonstop taxi driving,
Absolutely.
getting everybody everywhere.
And that's been hard, like the age gap. On one hand, people are like, oh, it must be nice because he's such a good helper, and sometimes he is a helper. I can say, don't let the 2-year-old run into the road or whatever. But on the other hand, it's hard to switch gears sometimes, from being with littles all day long, and then he storms in because he had a bad day, and
Right.
he throws his backpack down, and we've got math homework to
And
deal
he's
with.
going into the hormonal years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the baby's still crying, and the 4-year-old wants to watch another episode of Paw Patrol, and it's just, and that kind of, well, like you said, like everybody needing something different. I think that is a challenge for any mother with any child, more than one child, but especially with 5, I think that's like my biggest
I have to ask my
regret.
mom to watch
Yeah.
this since she had 5.
Yeah, I hate to say that, but I feel like there are needs that go unmet entirely
Yeah.
for each of the children because you just can't. And as much as I want to like give each one my individual attention when there's a problem, it's just not always possible.
Yeah.
If the baby's crying and these 2 are fighting, and this one needs to sit down and get a hug, but I can't right now. So this one ends up having to sit by herself and not get a hug when she, so
And
that's
you're
really
aware
difficult.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the more magical moments that might have where synchronicity worked or things were smooth? Do you have any favorite moments?
Just when they're all getting along and enjoying things. I pick a word of the year for every year. That's kind of lots of people do, and I spent some time trying to figure out what my word of this year was going to be. And archetypes, like I said, I was doing a meditation on the maiden archetype and that joyful, exuberant energy. And I was realizing that is something that is missing from my life a lot, is just that sense of joy, because I'm always busy and nose to the grindstone and let's get this done. And I just don't take enough time to just be in the moment and enjoy childhood as it is, you know. I mean, things are hard, but they're hilarious and they're so sweet, and they're, you know. And so I finally chose my word of the year as play. I just need to play more, and I have really made an intention to do that. I mean, even when I'm not feeling it, I'm like, all right, let's go out in the yard and let's kick a ball and jump on the trampoline. And the more I do it, the easier it gets. You know, it's mid-January. We haven't done much of it, but I have been laughing more with my kids, and that is a moment of magic, is like recognizing that, you know, what's the point if you're not enjoying it, right?
Some of the ways that I enjoyed parenting was taking mistakes and turning them into either joyful and or learning. Like, so let's say one of the kids spilt all the Band-Aids all over the floor, and then while I was doing something else, instead of freaking out, then it'd be like, oh, okay, let's play with the Band-Aids. So let's like line the Band-Aids up on the stairs. Let's walk them down here. Let's do stuff like, so just turning anything into then a game, right? And making it something. Or I really enjoy.
You have to, or you'll lose your mind.
Things. Yeah, and I have just lots of memories of me just taking objects and making them be not the objects that they are, and doing things like that with them as just to break up the monotony, to make myself see life in a more childlike way.
Now, I just watched your other podcast with your daughter, who is a performance artist. Do you think that, I mean, she works with things that are not necessarily as they are, making metaphor for life, and I'm sure you influenced her a little bit.
Perhaps, just playing in different ways. Anyway, I just wanted to share. I have positive, those are like some of my magic moments of doing silly things.
And that shows your creativity.
Or just bringing creativity in as a way to bring in play and an underlying joy, or helping the kids see, like looking at reflections on something, like even if I broke a piece of glass, like, oh, let's look at the lights falling on that, you know, before we pick it up, like just change.
Which is wonderful, and that has not been my instinct historically, and so I'm being intentional about that and enjoying it myself, but also I want my kids to remember that they had fun. I don't want them to remember mom that was always saying I don't have time.
And it's such a balance to go between the you've got to get things done, right? Everybody's got to eat. There's appointments. There are things that have to happen. The diaper has to be changed. There's and then to be able to straddle that with the enjoying of the moment and just being, that's such a challenging to maneuver back and forth so that you can keep things on track but also enjoy the process.
Right. And the process can be messier, right? And so how can you allow for a little mess while a little order and a little and kind of dance between those two?
Absolutely.
So is there anything that that you would want women to know? We brought you on because you had so many kids, and this was we wanted to show how powerful that
choice is. That's a choice, and it's a powerful choice.
And I can only imagine the blessings that these kids are going to have as they grow up. Having had you there as the stable force in their lives, and someone who's so committed to do the studying and be like steering your family in a way, and doing it from a space of love and consciously, the whole time. So would you want women to know something, like what, based on your own experience, and things that you've overcome? Is there something that you'd want women who might be watching this, or even men? I don't know if there are any men watching this, but if there are, would there be something that you'd want them to know?
I think something that has really stuck out to me over the past year or so, specifically with a group that I'm in, some work that we've been doing, is how much we are all the same. We are, I mean, it doesn't matter if I have 5 kids, you have 2 grandkids, somebody else may have, you know, there are many variations of a family, and, but we're all going through the same struggles, you know, we all, there's a lot, and we are all scared, and we are all trying our best, and we are all, and it may be on a different level, but I think that's important just to recognize that, just give each other a little more grace, and
Give ourselves a little more grace.
give ourselves a little more
Yeah.
grace, absolutely. Making
Yeah.
courageous connections with people, you know, I think that's a big one too.
Yeah, and you did that by showing up today.
I know.
We're really delighted
you
that
so
you did.
much.
Knowing
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
like, your life is so busy, right? And
Yeah.
you took time out, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think we're at our time. Is there?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We like to do
A
well.
toast.
First, if anyone wanted to ask you any questions about parenting, would you be willing to receive them? Like I did through
Absolutely.
Facebook, or what would the best way for them to get a hold of you be?
Well, I guess you can find me on Facebook. My name is Savanah Puckett. Also, Instagram is growth_at_home. Growth at home.
Okay.
So-
Nice. Okay. Yeah. All right. And we'll have that in the episode notes too.
Yeah.
But so Savannah Puckett on Facebook or on Instagram, Growth at Home.
Yep.
Underscores. Okay. Thank you for being
thanks,
here.
Savannah.
So we do a little toast. So you can toast with us, and we say, "Here is to a soulful, joyful
edgy,
joyful life." Yes.
Thank you.
You're here.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.